SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the most beloved shows of all time, but there have been plenty of incidents where the show could have been cancelled. Let's see them. In Midlife Crustacean, a questionable scene of adult hijinks made Nickelodeon get so nervous they pulled the whole episode. This episode starts with Mr. Krabs feeling ancient. First of all, he's struggling to get out of his hammock, but then Pearl, being the sweet, spoiled little brat she is, makes him breakfast and casually reminds him to take his pill. Now, I don't want to know what the pill he's taking, but that's another thing. When he asks her if she thinks he's old, she's like, "Yeah, but you're still my old man," which just shows how stupid kids are. You may as well just punch him in the damn face. Anyway, as he's walking down the street, still in denial about his age, a Boy Scout offers to help Mr. Krabs walk, only for his arm to come off in the kid's hands. Pretty sure that's leprosy, not old age. He gets to the Krusty Krab and then he hears some kid complain that his Krabby Patty tastes old, just like Mr. Krabs, which honestly is so unnecessary. This whole episode is like a reason for not having kids. So Krabs is feeling super down and he overhears SpongeBob and Patrick planning a fun night out and asks if he can tag along. Patrick's kinda unsure, but after Mr. Krabs nails their cool guy handshake, they let him join. Obviously, their quality control is high. So the night starts and it's not what Mr. Krabs expected, like at all. Their first stop is at a laundromat where SpongeBob and Patrick are amused by watching their faces spin in washing machines. They're mentally fucked in the head, so I guess we have to expect it. But Mr. Krabs, not so much. The night just gets weirder from there. They go traffic watching, visiting a dentist's office, redoing a roof, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and even hitting up a library. But nothing seems to click with Mr. Krabs, who's growing more and more frustrated. He wants to fuck shit up and also probably rob some people. Then they end up at this kid's arcade called Bunny Buns, where Mr. Krabs is surrounded by annoying kids constantly asking him, "Are you feeling it?" He's definitely not feeling it. Again, another key point that reminds us how fucking annoying children are. Fed up, he calls it a night until Patrick mentions a panty raid. Now hang on a fucking moment. A panty raid in SpongeBob? What? Mr. Krabs perks up at the sound of that and sticks around. Pervert. Turns out the panty raid doesn't go as planned because they accidentally raid Mr. Krabs' mom's house. That's pretty fucked on several levels, honestly. She catches them in the act and poor Mr. Krabs is mortified about having to come out as a pervert. As punishment, she grounds him, sending him to his old bedroom. Despite the embarrassment, he feels nostalgic and younger again. It's amazing what stealing your mom's panties can do to a money-hungry pervert. SpongeBob apologizes, but Mr. Krabs appreciates the experience, ending the night on a high note. As SpongeBob leaves, Mr. Krabs' mom reminds him to turn off the lights, and he obediently replies, "Yes, mommy." Oh my fucking god, no wonder this episode was banned. Even I need therapy to get through that one. Speaking of parental issues, our next episode, Rockabye Bivalve, features SpongeBob and Patrick taking on the parental roles for a baby clam. But some people really hated the idea of non-traditional family structures in a kid's cartoon. The episode kicks off with SpongeBob and Patrick hearing this weird noise which turns out to be a baby scallop, all helpless and alone. Probably delicious. But these two are idiots. So they decide to adopt the little guy, naming him Junior, and take on parenting roles, which is the whole reason this episode is controversial. People don't like the idea of two mentally questionable fictional cartoon animals acting as parents to a baby scallop. So SpongeBob becomes the mom and Patrick becomes the dad. They dive right into parenting life, feeding Junior, changing diapers, and strolling around Bikini Bottom as a little family. By the end of the day, they tuck Junior into bed at SpongeBob's place, feeling like they've got it all under control. And nobody in Bikini Bottom bothers to ask any questions because they're probably all doing similar weird shit. But the next morning, Patrick, in full dad mode, announces that he has to go to work, leaving SpongeBob to handle all the household chores. Here we go. He promises to help when he gets back, but surprise, surprise, when Patrick returns, he's too tired and just wants to watch TV, which, to be fair, is all he ever does anyway. The guy's a fucking moron. What else can he do? This goes on for days, with SpongeBob doing all the work and Patrick slacking off. Eventually, SpongeBob's patience runs out. Furious, he confronts Patrick, pointing out the mountain of dirty diapers. Some of them are stuck to Squidward's house. This is not a house, it's a toilet. So Patrick finally realizes how irresponsible he's been and promises to come home at 6 p.m. to give SpongeBob a break. But of course, Patrick rolls in at midnight after hanging out at a party. SpongeBob is beyond frustrated and they have another showdown, this time with less diapers. Patrick, irritated by SpongeBob's nagging, tries to escape the argument by saying he's heading back to work. But what fucking job could he have? He's an unemployed loser. SpongeBob, suspicious, follows him and discovers that Patrick's work is literally just lounging under his rock and watching TV, which, to be fair, is better than what we thought he was going to be doing. They start arguing again, but then they notice Junior attempting to jump out of a two-story window. They rush to save him, but it's too late. Devastated, they assume the worst and break down, thinking they've failed as parents. Kind of an understatement after killing a baby, but okay. But it turns out Junior is totally fine. He learned how to fly and gives SpongeBob a sweet goodbye kiss before flying away. So it turns out that if you just randomly find and steal a baby, you might be able to make it fly through pure neglect. Therapists hate that one trick. As Patrick asks for a kiss too, Junior drops a coconut on his head, punishing him for his laziness. It has no effect on his intelligence. Then, with all forgiven, he gives Patrick a kiss too. SpongeBob and Patrick feel like proud parents. Patrick even jokes about having another baby, but SpongeBob's horrified expression says it all. That. Which is basically exactly what Plankton says in One Course Meal, a highly controversial episode in which Mr. Krabs torments his enemy to the point of wanting to kill himself. This episode features Mr. Krabs tormenting Plankton to the point of suicidal ideation, which many viewers found dark and inappropriate for a children's show. So Mr. Krabs is having the time of his life, taking a bath in his money. Kinda gross, he's gonna be handing out cash that's been all over his junk, but okay, different cultures. Suddenly he smells something burning. Turns out it's coming from Plankton, who's trying to blow up the Krusty Krab with his latest batch of explosives. You know, the usual. No creative thinking, just explosives, blah blah. Anyway, after the explosion, Plankton captures both SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs, and tries to get Mr. Krabs to reveal the Krabby Patty formula by tickling him with the feather. I mean, it's not the worst thing he could do to get the formula. Plankton's usually entering Krabs repeatedly to get what he wants, so this is basically foreplay. But while Krabs holds back, SpongeBob, the ever-useless asshole, accidentally blurts out where the formula is hidden. How does he even know? Like, if I was Krabs, I would not tell this moron a damn fucking thing, even if my life depended on it. Just kill me. But as Plankton is about to make his move, Pearl shows up, and it turns out that Plankton is absolutely terrified of whales, which is low-key kinda racist. So he freaks out and hightails it back to the chum bucket. But now Mr. Krabs knows that Plankton has a weakness. So he goes to Pearl and asks her if he can borrow one of her dresses for a totally normal reason. Nothing to be freaked out about, even though your dad is sniffing around your clothes like a fucking predator. So Plankton's back at the chum bucket, confessing to his computer wife Karen about his deep-seated whale phobia, which apparently comes from whales eating his family members. I don't buy that. Pretty sure it's just straight up racism, but whatever gets you through the day, I guess. But Karen's like, nah, don't be a pussy. They probably had it coming. Get over it. Like, damn, bro. But soon, Pearl shows up at the chum bucket pretending to want to eat Plankton. But you know, it's not Pearl, it's Mr. Krabs, which is fucked. So this goes on for 2 weeks, driving Plankton absolutely mad. He even has a nightmare about a demonic Pearl eating him and his family, which leaves him seriously shaken. He's losing his mind. And at this point, Plankton is so freaked out, he lies in the street hoping a bus will run him over. Yeah, he would rather die than spend one more minute in fear of whales. That is how bad Mr. Krabs has fucked him up. SpongeBob feels bad and tries to convince Mr. Krabs to ease up, but Mr. Krabs won't budge, blaming SpongeBob for spilling the formula's location and basically saying, "You're next, you little yellow fuck." So SpongeBob decides to help Plankton get revenge by telling him the truth and revealing Mr. Krabs' own biggest fear, mimes. Plankton immediately gets a mime to torment him, and Mr. Krabs is totally freaked, but now the whole thing is just crazy, and SpongeBob has had enough, so he uses holographic whales to scare Plankton away from the formula for good, which is just as fucked up as everything else. But then SpongeBob decides to end things on his own psycho terms and decides to let the mime continue to torment Krabs. And speaking of torment, the camping episode is just one big episode of it, featuring underlying themes of fear and anxiety which deeply upset some parents. The portrayal of SpongeBob and Patrick's camping trip includes themes of fear and anxiety, which some parents found inappropriate for a children's show. So the episode starts with Squidward all pumped for a quiet, peaceful weekend away from the morons he's forced to work with. SpongeBob and Patrick are going camping, taking their stupid ideas far, far away from him. But they're not. They're camping right in SpongeBob's front yard, basically under Squidward's nose. Why would they ever go anywhere else? Squidward storms out to confront them, telling them this isn't real camping because they're still so close to home. They should go somewhere further, like, I don't know, some war zone. But SpongeBob says it doesn't matter where you camp as long as it feels like the wilderness. And this gets under Squidward's skin because it's so wrong. So, out of pride, he decides to join them and show off his superior camping skills. Basically, humiliate them. Except his fancy tent setup completely flops, leaving him sleeping out in the open under the stars. As the night goes on, they start roasting marshmallows, but SpongeBob and Patrick are goofing off, pretending they're astronauts, and Squidward's just trying to get through it. He's basically disassociating from life and patiently waiting for death to come and rescue him. He tries to grab a can opener from his house to eat his Swedish barnacle balls, which by the way confirms that Squidward sucks balls voluntarily, but SpongeBob shuts that down, saying it's against the spirit of camping. It's not pleasant to eat balls when you're in the bushy wilderness. So Squidward's stuck eating marshmallows, which Patrick keeps accidentally launching into his face. SpongeBob busts out the campfire song, which Squidward absolutely hates. It's probably the closest he comes to actual murder. Squidward retaliates with his clarinet, playing an awful version of Kumbaya, but SpongeBob freaks out, worried that the bad music will attract a sea bear, and tries to shut Squidward up by shooting a marshmallow into his throat. So SpongeBob says he can't eat balls, but he can deep throat a marshmallow. Interesting how that shit works out here. Squidward, thinking the sea bear stuff is total bullshit, mocks SpongeBob and Patrick by doing everything they say will attract one. He even stomps around in a hoop skirt he brought for some reason, completely convinced it's all made up, but then, bam, a real sea bear shows up and starts attacking Squidward for, among other things, wearing a sombrero the wrong way. I don't understand where any of these clothes came from, but at least they're prepared. Squidward runs around in a panic, trying to escape, but the sea bear keeps attacking. Finally, Squidward jumps into the anti-sea bear circle SpongeBob and Patrick made, and the sea bear leaves him alone. But just when Squidward thinks it's over, SpongeBob casually mentions sea rhinoceroses, and wouldn't you know it, one shows up. This time, only SpongeBob and Patrick are safe thanks to their sea rhinoceros undergarments. Squidward once again faces another disaster. Sometimes it's good to listen to idiots, not in this case, but sometimes. Yet, SpongeBob continues to listen to himself, an idiot, chasing his dreams of flying even if it kills him in The Sponge Who Could Fly. So, SpongeBob is out in jellyfish fields, watching the jellyfish float around and wishing he could fly just like them. So he decides he can, even though he can't. I mean, he's almost definitely gonna die, but well. So he tries all these crazy methods, like a biplane, bat wings, a chair with balloons, even a giant kite tied to a bike for some reason, with Patrick cheering him on the whole time. But none of it works, because duh. So now the people of Bikini Bottom start noticing all his failures, and they're calling him the Birdman of Bikini Bottom, roasting the shit out of him for trying to fly. How dare he have a damn dream. Feeling embarrassed and fed up, SpongeBob says basically that. He tries to explain to everyone that he's just chasing his dream, but the townspeople, who all have their own unrealized dreams, take it as an insult and get angry for no fucking reason whatsoever. Like, okay, you have shitty lives, you can't blame a sponge for that. A mob forms and SpongeBob ends up running off a cliff, landing in a truck of mud, then right into another truck of feathers. So now he looks like a total fuck up and feels even worse. I mean, he's totally over the idea of flying. And while he's drying his hair, he gets a prank call from someone pretending to be a fan and calling themselves Joe Mama. Guess this guy wanted to be a comedian. Seems like there's a reason that dream crashed and burned. As he talks, SpongeBob accidentally inflates his pants with the hairdryer, and guess what? Yeah, his pants give him the ability to fly. Turns out he just needed some junk in the trunk. So SpongeBob's thrilled and starts flying all around town, helping people with their everyday stuff. He's a hero, and everyone loves him. But, you know, people are shit. All the townsfolk start demanding he do all kinds of dumb, unnecessary shit for them, to the point that Spongebob is totally overwhelmed. He doesn't even enjoy flying or spending time with the jellyfish anymore. He tries to escape to Jellyfish Fields, but the crowd just chases him down again. So now he's flying away, but then Cannonball Jenkins shoots him down with one of his balls, causing his pants to deflate and sending him crashing back down to Earth. This is probably the most relatable episode of SpongeBob, and I don't know how to feel about that. At first, it seems like everyone's mourning SpongeBob, but it turns out they're just upset about losing his flying pants. Nobody actually gives a shit whether SpongeBob is alive or not, because he was just a whipping boy to do their boring, dumbass chores. So they take off with his pants, leaving SpongeBob feeling defeated, until the jellyfish show up and help him fly again. It's a pretty weird ending, honestly. He ends up singing a cheesy song about friendship being all you need to fly, and then Patrick randomly shows up and invites SpongeBob to get pizza. But then the episode ends as Patrick flies away like a superhero, leaving SpongeBob totally confused. Wait, what? So I guess these characters have some weird superpowers we don't even know about. Which is fantastic news for SpongeBob, because in Dying for Pie, Squidward feeds him a pie filled with a bomb that will definitely kill him. A very dark episode all about death. So it all starts with Squidward having this bizarre dream where he's on an island, all dressed up in island clothes and playing a piano. It's his happy place. But then suddenly one of the piano notes turns into a bell sound. Actually, it's SpongeBob's alarm clock next door, forcing Squidward to wake up from his not-so-peaceful dream. This is not his happy place. This is hell. Squidward shows up to work at the Krusty Krab only to learn it's Employee Brotherhood Day, a totally made-up day where the employees exchange homemade gifts. SpongeBob, in what can only be described as a total fucking moment of complete psychotic breakdown, gives Squidward a sweater made from his own eyelashes. Let's just take a moment to take this in. What the actual fuck kind of gift is this? This is the kind of shit you see on those true crime shows before the employee's body turns up in the lagoon. Anyway, Squidward, because he is fucking sane, thinks it's gross and brushes it off, which makes SpongeBob cry. So naturally, SpongeBob hands him a second sweater, this one made of his tears. Oh, come on, man! Squidward, not feeling this whole make-your-own-gift thing, goes outside and finds some pirates selling pies. I guess the whole plundering the seas business doesn't pay as well. The pirates casually mention the pies are actually bombs, but when Squidward whines about not being able to buy one, they backtrack and sell him a pie for $25. Even though he was explicitly warned that it's a bomb, Squidward gives the pie to SpongeBob as his homemade gift. But Mr. Krabs decides to take a little taste first. Just as he's about to get some milk, the pie crumb hits the floor and explodes, blowing up the back of the Krusty Krab, which is basically an act of terrorism. Now Squidward's freaking out because the pie was obviously a bomb, and SpongeBob's sitting inside with the rest of it, completely clueless about the danger he's in. Actually, no, SpongeBob's eaten the entire bomb pie. And rather than, telling the kid that he's about to blow up, Mr. Krabs makes Squidward feel super guilty, reminding him that SpongeBob's going to explode by sunset when the pie reaches his lower intestine. I mean, fuck me, that's a bad day. Feeling terrible, Squidward spends the day with SpongeBob doing everything on his friendship list, trying to make SpongeBob's last hours fun. It's kind of the least he can do since he's basically turned SpongeBob into a clueless suicide bomber. They finish off the day watching the sunset, and Squidward's counting down the seconds to SpongeBob's supposed explosion. But instead of SpongeBob blowing up, it's just another totally unrelated explosion from the wall they're sitting behind. SpongeBob is alive. In fact, he pulls out the real pie bomb he's been saving in his back pocket. As he goes to share it with Squidward, he trips, the pie explodes, and Bikini Bottom is completely destroyed in a massive explosion. Somehow Squidward survives and can only groan in pain with a simple ouch. So they just killed off the entirety of Bikini Bottom, but this guy is still thinking of his own pain. But Squidward is not the only one capable of killing people. SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs did just that in Nasty Patty, or at least they thought they did. So the episode kicks off with a spooky storm night, and the narrator jumps in to say that it reminds him of that time Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob thought they killed a health inspector. Hang on a fucking minute, They thought they did what to a who now? On a bright morning at the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob's doing his thing in the kitchen while Mr. Krabs is literally bathing in money. Seems to do that a lot. I bet he fucking stinks. And not in a smells like $1,000,000 kind of way. Anyway, a health inspector shows up for a surprise inspection, so Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to whip up one of everything on the menu, which doesn't seem like the most cost-effective way to do shit, but okay. Just as the inspector's about to try a Krabby Patty, a news report reveals that a fake inspector's been going around scamming restaurants for free food. So Mr. Krabs freaks out, assuming this guy's a fraud, and plots with SpongeBob to prank him. They create the nastiest burger ever, using toenail clippings, seahorse radish, and even drop it in the toilet for good measure. Now call me crazy, but I don't think this is the kind of shit that a businessman should be doing in his own business, even as a prank. Like, bro, come on now. You want to be known as the toilet place? That's the chum bucket. But before the inspector can take a bite, a fly flies into his mouth, making him choke. He slips, hits his head, and he's out, right as the news announces the real fake inspector's been caught. Oh, shit. So now it's panic mode. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob think they've just killed the real inspector, so they decide the best plan: bury the body. Don't bother alerting the authorities. No, just hide the evidence. So they haul the unconscious inspector up a hill to bury him, but he starts waking up, so SpongeBob accidentally knocks him out again with a rock. I mean, good God, why not execute him while you're at it? Get all the crimes committed. So the cops show up before they can finish the job. Somehow they end up putting the inspector in the trunk of the police car, trying to act natural, but everything gets sketchier by the minute. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob are sweating, especially when one cop wants ice from the freezer where they've now stashed the body. Eventually they crack and confess to murder, but when the cop checks the freezer, there is no body. It turns out the inspector's fine, just super disoriented, and he's somehow forgotten that these two guys tried to kill him multiple times. Everyone celebrates with Krabby Patties, but not before the inspector gets smacked by a door. At least he's not being hauled into a freezer, and everybody is happy with the outcome, I guess. Which isn't really the case in the episode Fools in April, as SpongeBob and Squidward's prank war was considered way too harsh for a children's show. So the episode kicks off with SpongeBob waking up super excited because it's April Fool's Day, his absolute favorite day, because he too is an idiot. Squidward's so on edge about what SpongeBob might have up his sleeve that he tries calling out of work pretending he's sick. But Mr. Krab tricks him with a prank about an art collector wanting to buy Squidward's work. Squidward rushes to work only to realize he's been pranked by SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs. Frustrated, he threatens to quit, but SpongeBob promises no more pranks. Why anyone would believe him on April Fool's Day, I have no idea. SpongeBob keeps pulling pranks on the customers, harmless little jokes that they actually enjoy, and everyone's laughing and having a great time except Squidward. He's jealous. He can't stand all the fun, so he decides to show SpongeBob what a real prank looks like. He sets up this over-the-top prank involving a huge anchor, some mustard, and a rope. You know, the must-have items for any kind of dumbass prank. When SpongeBob innocently goes to clean it up, he gets caught in the trap and goes flying all over the restaurant, eventually crashing into a garbage can. Squidward laughs hysterically, but SpongeBob runs out crying. The customers are horrified, calling Squidward out for being too cruel. As they leave in disgust, Squidward finally realizes SpongeBob's pranks were harmless and fun, albeit stupid, while his were just mean. Feeling guilty, Squidward heads to SpongeBob's house to apologize, but it's not easy. SpongeBob isn't in the mood to talk, and Squidward tries everything. Finally, he puts a bubble over his head and delivers the apology SpongeBob can't hear. Just as Squidward's about to give up, he's haunted by guilt and goes back to genuinely apologize, even admitting he likes SpongeBob, something he'll forever regret saying, no doubt. SpongeBob forgives him, but it turns out the whole town overheard the apology. They all yell April Fools at Squidward, leaving him stunned. Squidward tries to play it off, but runs home laughing like a maniac. Speaking of maniacs, Fungus Among Us is an episode all about weird shit. Actually, the episode was so gross and disturbing to viewers that it developed a reputation all of its own. So the episode kicks off with SpongeBob snoozing away while Gary's stomach is growling. But there's no food. So Gary wakes SpongeBob up, but Gary refuses to eat the organic snail food SpongeBob gives him. That is disgusting. Instead, Gary chows down on some gross sea fungus he finds on the floor, which totally freaks SpongeBob out. He tries to clean it up, but Patrick shows up and notices that some of the ick has stuck to SpongeBob's head. Patrick, who by the way often functions as SpongeBob's doctor despite being the worst person for this advice, tells SpongeBob to scratch it like there's no tomorrow. Big surprise, this only makes it worse. At the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob flicks off some of the ick, but it just grows back even bigger. There's just no way to stop this mess from growing. He tries scraping it off into the trash, but the fungus just keeps multiplying. Squidward sees the situation and freaks out, calling the SWAT team, who declares SpongeBob's ick the worst case they've ever seen, which kinda makes you wonder how many people in Bikini Bottom have been licking up sea fungus. They throw him in a cage, but not before some of the ick flies off and lands on Squidward, starting the whole mess all over again. So while SpongeBob's quarantined at home in a bubble, Patrick shows up and nearly pops the bubble multiple times, as if the whole thing is specifically to prevent Bikini Bottom being decimated by a virus. Sure enough, the bubble does pop, and Patrick has to blow a new one around SpongeBob. Meanwhile, the ick has spread all over the Krusty Krab thanks to Squidward becoming the latest incubator of the plague. Squidward accidentally infects the food, and soon the whole place is crawling with fungus, which actually might be better than usual for the Krusty Krab. Things hit a boiling point when SpongeBob, still in his bubble, shows up at the restaurant, even though he was given a specific order not to do that. Literally, the only thing he was asked. The health inspector stirs up a riot, blaming SpongeBob for the outbreak. Just when it seems like everyone's about to attack SpongeBob, Gary shows up and starts licking the ick off everyone, starting with Mr. Krabs. Turns out, Gary's a bottom feeder, and eating the fungus is his job. So yeah, Gary eats ass professionally, and he's happy to lick everybody in town. Gary quickly saves the day, and Mr. Krabs, ever the businessman, charges $5 a pop for Gary to de-ick the customers. I don't even know what to do with that one. But if you haven't had enough of psychological trauma, I Was a Teenage Gary will help you out. This is an episode full of animal abuse and neglect and some weird body horror shit that traumatized many kids. So SpongeBob is having a blast playing with Gary when Patrick shows up, all excited about a jellyfishing convention in Ukulele Bottom happening that weekend. SpongeBob, realizing he can't take Gary, asks Squidward to watch him. Squidward isn't thrilled, but agrees just to get SpongeBob and Patrick out of his hair. SpongeBob even gives Squidward a full rundown on how to care for Gary, including these huge cans of snail food labeled for morning and night. There is literally no way he could fuck this up. Of course, as soon as they leave, Squidward finds a way. He immediately bails on the responsibility and decides to sunbathe all weekend, totally ignoring Gary and basically leaving him to die. Gary's left inside, lonely and neglected, just waiting for SpongeBob to come back. This is the second episode of the series that revolves around Gary having a snail sitter who's determined to kill him, so I think the show really fucking hates him. When SpongeBob returns, Squidward panics, suddenly remembering he was supposed to take care of Gary, even though it was literally all he fucking had to do for a weekend. 2 days. He had been in the sun for 2 days. But when he checks on him, Gary's super sick from a lack of food, water, and attention. Wow, shocking. Squidward tries to feed him, but Gary's so weak that he can't even eat. Just as SpongeBob is about to come in, Squidward panics and stuffs all of Gary's food in his mouth, awkwardly pretending everything's fine. My guy, how the f do you think you're gonna get away with this? Gary, looking sickly, shuffles into the room, and SpongeBob immediately knows something's up. He calls Dr. Gilliam, the vet, who says Gary needs a shot of snail plasma, which I guess is like snail Botox. Of course, the vet leaves it to SpongeBob because he's too squeamish to do it himself, which is insane. This is his job. SpongeBob, also too nervous, asks Squidward to give Gary the injection, but SpongeBob can't stop moving Gary around, worried it'll hurt him. In the chaos, Squidward accidentally injects SpongeBob in the nose instead. Squidward insists everything's fine, but SpongeBob starts acting strange, eventually transforming into a full-on snail. He tries to get help from Squidward, but Squidward freaks out and barricades himself in his house, convinced the plasma is to blame. During the madness, Squidward accidentally injects himself and, you guessed it, also turns into a snail. It's one of the creepiest f***ing things this show has ever done, and the reason so many people complain about this episode. SpongeBob, Gary, and now Snail Squidward meow on a fence as Patrick, totally annoyed, yells at them to shut up and throws a boot at Squidward, knocking him off the fence. SpongeBob Snail Pants is not a show any of us ever want to see.